Hello, everyone. Good evening.
So, what we do mostly every week is try to create awareness about endometriosis. And that is something which has become like a passion for me, seeing so many people going through it, I think. Hi, Anindita.
Hi. Can you?
Finally.
Am I audible?
Yes, of course, you are audible. And I'm so happy to have you on our live today.
I'm so
So,
glad I'm here.
how are you feeling today?
I'm okay. I'm okay today. But yeah, as endo is unpredictable, so yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reason I asked how you're doing today because every day
Yeah.
is a different day.
Yeah.
So before I start anything, so today's discussion is going to be interesting because it deals with the mental aspect, the mental health aspect of endometriosis and chronic diseases,
Yeah.
which is often neglected.
Yeah.
That's what I feel because we take care of everything else, but
Yeah.
when it comes to mental health, the way it plays on your mind
Yeah.
is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So we have with us today Anindita, who is like an expert when it comes to mental health and chronic illnesses. So Anindita, welcome to this live session.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Shita. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'll try to to talk as much as I can
No,
from
I
personal
have
and
been
professional experience.
I've been seeing what you do, Anindita, and trust me, it is beautiful. It is beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Let me
much.
just
Yeah.
give a small introduction
Yeah.
for Anindita for people who don't know her. She's a neurodivergent psychotherapist and an endometriosis and chronic illness advocate. She's a certified trauma therapist from the Trauma Research Foundation, Boston, USA.
Yeah.
She largely works with people with trauma experiences, disabilities, and chronic pain. She raises awareness about endometriosis through their page, Therapist with Endo, on Instagram, and also writes about it on various platforms. And trust me, if you follow her, you will find a lot of content which is really important. So, Anandita, it's a very interesting background that you have. Not a lot of people I've seen are into such diversified
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen general psychotherapists, but somebody who is a queer and neurodivergent psychotherapist is something which I haven't heard about very often.
Yeah.
So, can you just share your journey of becoming one?
Becoming a psychotherapist.
A queer neurodivergent psychotherapist. Sorry, I might be a little off today because it's one of those days when I'm stuck with my migraine and you
Oh
know,
my God, I'm so sorry you're in pain.
so that's okay. I think we have to do what we have to do. So it's fine.
I am queer, so I identify as non-binary.
Okay.
And I am queer, so hence I'm a queer psychotherapist. I'm neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and I live with ADHD. So
Okay.
yeah, so that really became a big part of my work. I think a lot
Mm,
of my work is very driven by my personal life,
mm,
especially from the perspective that I live with chronic illnesses like endometriosis, fibromyalgia, ankylosing spondyloarthritis, and I am neurodivergent and I'm queer. So all of that invariably comes into my work as a psychotherapist. Why I became a psychotherapist is a whole different reasoning.
well, we would love to hear. I mean, it wouldn't have been an easy journey, for
No.
sure.
No, because when I became a psychotherapist, and I come from a very small town, like I grew up in Bhilai, it's in Chhattisgarh. It's a very small town in central India,
Hmm.
and nobody is a psychotherapist there. I think now still people talk about therapy.
Yeah.
Like
Right. Right.
pandemic, the landscape has changed quite a bit, but that wasn't the case back in 2008 when I was starting out. So
Mm,
so yeah, like it wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't an easy choice because people didn't know what it was. There was a lot of stigma. Like I heard a lot of things when I was looking into psychotherapy and when I was wanting to become a psychotherapist. I heard a lot of uh, stigmatized statements like judgments like, oh yeah, you'll work with quote unquote mad people and then you will become mad and things like that, right? And it just leaves you feeling that where our society was, I know that has drastically changed at the moment. The openness to therapy, the openness to vulnerability, the struggles that people are going through, uh, people are more willing to talk about it. Yet I feel that we have a lot to. We have we have miles to go before we get to a place where it's something that people can talk without shame.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We still have a long way to go
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
the place more inclusive for everyone,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
More inclusive. Yeah, that's the word, right? Like that's
Yeah,
at least one of the things that I try to strive towards, making it a little more inclusive. But yeah, like it's not something that is accessible for everybody. Not all spaces of therapy, even now, are accessible for everybody. So yeah,
that makes sense. And to come from a small town of India
yeah,
and to reach where you are right now, and I know you have been talking about it and writing about it in international publications also.
yeah,
So, which is amazing, which actually is amazing because it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, and specifically when you yourself are going through a lot of chronic illnesses, it's not easy.
it
It's not
isn't.
easy at all.
It isn't. I think it's a pain that a lot of fellow endometriosis uh, warriors or people can relate to, that it isn't an easy thing to do, to have a life along with your illness, which takes
Right.
like which takes a huge amount of your life and all your spoons and your bandwidth and everything. So it is a struggle for all of us to be able to do what we are doing, right? Like
Absolutely.
I, even to you sitting here with a migraine and doing this live, just so that there may be just somebody who can see it and know that
Exactly.
we are not alone in this. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
That's true. That's true, Anindita. Like for people who don't understand what endometriosis feels like, is when I was speaking to Anindita, Anindita, the last message you did was, "What if I have a flare?"
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it is one thing which everyone is scared of, and that's how
yeah,
uncertain it is to be living with a condition like endometriosis, because every day is a different day for you.
yeah,
But saying that, you're right here doing it, and I'm so glad, you know, to gather yourself and, just
yeah,
come out right there.
yeah.
Right? So Anindita, what inspired you to become an advocate for endometriosis and chronic illnesses? I mean, how does these experiences influence you as your work as a therapist?
Uh, what inspired me to become an advocate for endometriosis? I honestly don't consider myself an advocate for endometriosis because I think I advocate for it, but I still don't consider myself an advocate because I know I don't do it at a level where a lot of other people do. I still try and do it as much as I can, but having said that, the journey to the diagnosis of endometriosis was very lonely. For me, it was very, very lonely. Right? Like it was
Right.
years before I got diagnosed, and nobody around knew what endometriosis was. Nobody around, even after my diagnosis, nobody around me had an understanding of what endometriosis was. It is said statistically that 1 in 10 people have endometriosis. I didn't know 1 in 10. I was the 1 in 10, and all the 10 people around me didn't have endometriosis.
And trust me, it is 1 in 10 because there are so many which get undiagnosed, they are not in the statistics.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
consider only women when it comes to
yeah,
endometriosis
yeah,
statistics. But that's not the
definitely.
case,
No,
right?
people from
So I
different
think it's going to
genders,
be much more than that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. People from other genders are not considered at all. We don't have representation even in the endometriosis community, which leaves us
Right.
feeling very isolated. So for me, the journey was very isolating because I primarily started talking about my struggles on social media and
Hmm.
following other pages that have like that were talking about their struggles or
Hmm.
related to endometriosis or chronic illness just because I felt like I needed to see and hear people who have similar experiences. It
Right.
even if their ethnicity, their background, their genders were different from mine. So I needed to feel like I wasn't alone in this world and I wasn't struggling with something that was completely unheard of. Like,
That's
firstly,
right.
nobody was diagnosing it. Like, I started having massive endometriosis symptoms and I started falling consistently sick. Like, I always had them, but it flared up drastically for me in 2015. And I only got
Okay.
the diagnosis in 2018. 3 years
Okay.
consistently falling sick. I used to be falling sick even before that, like when I was a kid and teenager. When I was a teenager, I had terrible periods, like such bad periods. I had very bad GI issues at all times. But it was all like, oh, it's nothing. Like literally, it was always
Yeah.
said that it's nothing. And
Right. Right.
being the sick child amidst all the other children who weren't going through illnesses per se when I was in school, it always felt very isolating and alone.
Absolutely.
I think that was the
Absolutely.
primary reason why I started writing about endometriosis on my page, because in my head it was always like, if there is just one more person like me who is struggling and doesn't know what to do or doesn't know who to talk to, at least if
Absolutely.
my post comes across to them, they'll know, like, they're not alone. So in that way, I found a community of people who were also struggling, and then gradually it just started becoming something less lonely. And then all the systemic issues started coming up in my vision. Like they all started coming into my purview that, okay, you know what? This is not okay. Why are we denied access to healthcare? Why are we denied treatment? Why are we not heard? Then it became more into the space of fighting for your rights, letting
The
people
basic
know that you
rights.
have rights, basic rights. Your healthcare rights are your basic rights. Being able to be heard in a doctor's office is a basic right. And
Right.
consistent gaslighting. It's so that became then the anger that I would feel. I needed a space to channelize it. And then it became a space for me to start talking about medical gaslighting and start talking about people's experiences. Because once I started writing about my struggles on endometriosis, I got a lot of people who would come in for sessions because they were struggling with endometriosis, and listening to their experiences, hearing was so similar to my experiences of being gaslit, of the trauma that you undergo consistently living with a condition like endometriosis. So, yeah, it invariably moved into a space of advocacy. I had never planned it that way, but yeah,
I think none of us plan this. It just happens because we are just fighting to be heard, to
yeah,
be taken
yeah,
seriously.
yeah, yeah,
So that's all. That's how probably all of us begin.
yeah. And
You
that's
know.
such an intrinsic need, right? Like it's a very intrinsic human need to feel heard and seen.
Right.
Like literally, when you're a baby and you cry, you want the parent or the caregiver to come in and meet your need. That's how intrinsic the need of feeling seen and heard is. And
True.
here you're going to a doctor's clinic consistently and letting them know you're in pain, and you're told it's nothing. So that just
Absolutely.
at a very at grassroots level, it just leaves you extremely. It just leaves you feeling invalidated
That's right. That's
consistently.
right. Mm. The need of being validated by somebody who probably is qualified to do, qualified to do that is
Yeah.
what probably
Yeah.
we look for,
Yeah.
and which takes years, to happen.
Yeah.
All of us probably have suffered enough to actually reach the stage where there is so much of anger, the anger within us, or
Yeah.
the kind of, irritation that it
Yeah.
leads to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but then I'm glad that people are at least talking about it now, and there are people who are getting to know about what endometriosis is.
Yeah.
So even the doctors are having to diagnose it a little more sooner than what we
Yeah.
used to,
Yeah.
take.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll take that. I'll take that as a win in the fight. But yeah, like I have my I also look at it from the perspective that it isn't the ratio is skewed. The amount of doctors who are diagnosing it or are telling or speaking about it or understanding what it is, that's like one in like 1,000 doctors or one
Right.
in like
That's true.
100
That's true.
doctors, right?
That's true.
Which
I completely
invariably
agree.
makes it inaccessible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And so is the case in the urban areas.
yeah,
Imagine what must be going in the rural setups.
yeah,
I've got
yeah.
no clue what must be happening out there.
Oh
It
my
must be
God!
like
Like
painful.
the town that I come from, like it's not rural. It,
Hmm.
it's a
It's a
steel
town.
city, like steel
Yeah, yeah.
plants and things like that.
Yes.
But none of the doctors know about endometriosis. Nobody knows about endometriosis. Nobody talks about endometriosis. You don't talk about your periods at all.
Yeah.
So forget about talking about endometriosis, right? Like till now, only the ones like my friends or my people from there who follow me, they know a little about endometriosis. But till now, I have doctors there who say that, oh, you just have really bad pain during periods. Take some medicine and you're gonna be okay. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you, exactly,
That's
right?
a
Like that's what I
crazy
meant
thing
when
to
I said
happen.
that we still have miles to go when it comes to this as well.
Yeah, but then one step at a time, probably people like us, you, me,
Yeah,
and a lot of other people, we are just trying to bridge that gap, and we are
yeah,
just trying to do
yeah,
our bit, you know.
yeah.
So, Anindita, being a certified trauma therapist, could you
Yeah.
explain the intersection between trauma and chronic illness, and how do you address this in your practice?
So one of the things that we talk about when we talk about trauma is knowing when something ends, right? Like I'll give you an example. If we are having this talk, right? Right now, we know, you know, I know people who are attending this talk. They know that it is going to end in an hour, 15 minutes, or something like that. Right? There's an end point to something. When we
Right,
know something has an end point, even if it's stressful, but we know that something has an end point, it it gives us that capacity to endure that stress.
right,
It doesn't register in our nervous system as a trauma memory. It doesn't register as a traumatizing event because we know, and I'm not talking about like one singular event, and I'm not talking about a single event of trauma like sexual harassment and things like that. I'm not talking about that. Right? I'm talking about
right.
an everyday experience. When we know
Mm,
something is to end, it gives us the capacity to endure that stress. But when it comes to a chronic illness, it's very similar. The way our nervous systems respond is it's very similar to the way complex trauma shows up. Like if you grew up in a household where there was consistent violence and you never
mm,
know when it is going to end. You never know at what point this is going to be unpredictable. It's a very
right,
similar response in our nervous system when it comes to chronic illness. So one of the things that's consistently spoken is that, in the trauma literature and the intersection with chronic pain and chronic illness is that the reason why there is such a close connection between trauma and chronic pain is because chronic pain also is experienced as an ongoing trauma in your nervous system.
Right.
You don't know when it comes to an end. Right
Correct.
now, if I say that this talk is going to be forever and whoever has joined here is not going to be able to leave, this is it. Invariably, it's going to bring in a sense of panic. Why?
Correct.
It's the similar sense of panic that sets and settles into your nervous system when it is a chronic illness because there's so much unpredictability. There is a consistent, never-ending sense of struggle. So it is often correlated to the idea of an ongoing trauma because the nervous system responds similarly.
I get that. I get that. This was like so well explained, and actually makes a lot of sense. You know, the
The one
uncertainty
living
and
it will know what it is like when I say that, it is unpredictable and it's a consistent sense of dread that you live with. So it doesn't
yes,
increase your capacity of managing that until there is an intervention from the outside that allows you to help increase that capacity. It is very hard to increase that capacity by yourself because you're consistently dreading the next moment. Because you don't know what the next moment is going to look like. That unpredictability.
That's right. That's right. So this is something which I think people who have it's not just about endometriosis, it's about any chronic illness which is unpredictable and which can create sort of, discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, it can relate to anything like that. So can you give us some options of how to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for people with endometriosis?
I think one of the most important things we tend to talk about whenever we talk about mental health, right? Like, and I'm talking about all of us as a collective. Whenever we talk about mental health, we only talk about the personal aspects of mental health, right? Like, as if it's your responsibility alone to manage your mental health. However, you live with chronic illnesses, when you live with disabilities, when you live with neurodivergence, there is the systems that you're interacting with, right? And when I say systems, it's all of the systems, whether it is your family system, your college, your education, the workplace, all of these are different systems that you're interacting with on an everyday basis. If there are consistent systems that negate your reality, invariably your mental health is going to be impacted. We take away the systems part and we keep expecting a person to be resilient.
Right.
I think one of the things that we need to talk about more in the endometriosis community, which I don't see happening, is we are all expecting endometriosis to be like the expectation is that you take care of your nutrition, you take care of your stress, you take care of your mental health, you take care of every aspect of your life to deal with an illness, whereas the environment around you is literally doing nothing to help you deal with your illness. It is a systemic illness, not just within your body, but also outside of it. It is a systemic issue that you're consistently fighting. So we need to talk more about how do we create more inclusive systems around the person that lets you feel that, hey, you are not the odd one out. You're not the one who is consistently feeling that you're left behind. Because so many of us, right, we have lost relationships, we have lost friendships, we have lost marriages, we have lost jobs, we have lost dreams of an envisioned future. We have lost ideas of what our life would have looked like if we didn't have endometriosis, or if we didn't have the illnesses that we were living with, right?
Right.
I'm using endometriosis, but I want to say that it's about collectively all illnesses that are chronic,
Correct.
right?
That's right.
That
Right.
bring in pain. If I wasn't living in consistent pain, there is so much grief about all of that. We have lost all of these things because we don't have adequate systems around us that help us build ourselves that we don't have to lose. Which means that if we had uh, enough support when it comes to your medical conditions, which means if we had a medical system that was affirmative of your pain, you would have so many of us may have gotten diagnosed long before, right? So
Truth.
much of our conditions may not have uh, exacerbated to the levels that they are today. Right? If
That's right.
only we listen to pain of women, of people who are female assigned at birth, of femme representing people, of queer people, if only we listen to the pain, if we are pain affirmative, if we have a mental health system that is pain affirmative, right? If any of us had access, so many of us have lived through pain from the time we were in teenage years
Right.
or even earlier. If we had access to pain therapists, if we had access to pain psychologists, if we had psychologists who, therapists, even now, if we have enough therapists who are working with pain, if we have a mental health system that understands what chronic pain is, it will help
Correct.
build our capacity to live,
Absolutely.
to deal with that pain, right? It will help us learn what it feels like to be in our body. Even when pain exists, I can still have different experiences. How to access those experiences when pain exists. Right? When I talk to so many people, I sit with this feeling that so many of us our entire energy goes in just managing the pain.
That's right.
And the whole focus is your pain. And yes, it is because it is such a demanding experience. If we have family systems that support us, that fight for us, that stand by us, we don't always have that. Like, I'm privileged that I have that. But we collectively, we don't always have that.
Right.
If
That's
we
right.
have jobs where you're not you're not looked down upon because you have a chronic illness. You're not uh, DEI is not a gimmick anymore. If we have jobs and if we have corporate systems, if we have workplace policies and systems that are meant that help us who live with chronic illnesses, that help us who live with disabilities, we would have a better work-life balance as well. We would be able to work. So many of us are not able to work,
Not.
not just
That's
because
right.
we don't have the capacity to work, but because we don't have good enough work policies that help us work. And that's a systemic issue.
Right.
That's
Right.
not just an individual's resilience that shows up. We are resilient. We are standing up each time that we are knocked down. So to say that people who are living with chronic illnesses, you need to be more resilient, no. It's I think one of the biggest things that you asked me that how does that how can we build more inclusive support for people living with endometriosis? I think a big part of it is for people to understand A, what endometriosis is, B, how can people support people with endometriosis?
Right.
I know how to support myself, but more often than not, why we are also not able to support ourselves is because we don't have people permitting that support to us. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that we keep talking about in my sessions or in the whole endo community or chronic illness community, disability community is spoon theory. How do I ration my spoons? Like, what if my one spoon is an energy unit? How do I ration my energy unit so that at the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm completely wiped out.
Correct.
Because
Yes.
people living with disabilities and people living with endometriosis and chronic illnesses, we don't have unlimited spoons and we don't get them back. It's not like if I rest right now for an hour, I'll get my spoons back and I'll be up and about. So we are consistently having to ration. Like if I have this talk today, which is going to take 4 spoons, do I do cooking also on the same day? That's
Right.
rationing the spoons.
Hmm.
Now, I can ration my spoons, but what do I do if I am to live in a uh, family system, or if I am to be in a job where I'm consistently expected to perform, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
I'm consistently expected to show up as if I am not somebody living with chronic fatigue. How do I ration
Right.
my spoon when I am supposed to run that race because everybody else is also running that race?
Absolutely. Because somewhere you start feeling that you're losing on like the most important things in your life because you are not able to match up to the rest of the people, the so-called normal people,
Yeah,
and somewhere you consider yourself left out,
yeah,
and
exactly.
you start blaming yourself entirely for what is happening,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. So I think that the support system is something which is extremely important, extremely important. It's something which everyone has to do for each other.
yeah,
Otherwise, it will
yeah,
become difficult.
yeah,
Yeah, because I know I keep getting calls, I keep speaking to people, young girls about 20 in their 20s who are just starting their career and are in a mess, so you really have to counsel them that it's not a race, so it's all right,
yeah,
prioritize yourself.
yeah,
You have to do that. You don't have a choice with that,
yeah,
so
yeah. And that's the part.
because no one has to say that to us,
Yeah,
no one
yeah,
told that to us,
yeah,
you know
yeah. And that's the part, right? You don't have a choice.
you don't have a
Right?
choice.
That's the painful part. And I think when I say that we need to create systems that are inclusive of people with disabilities, people with endometriosis, people with chronic illnesses, is it is giving them the agency that you have a choice. And what
Right.
choice looks like for you is okay. But that is not that's where the dissonance comes from. We live in a world that tells us that's not okay to access that choice. Whether it is, I know so many people who live with endometriosis and they don't have a family that supports them.
Hmm.
I know
I
people
know.
who live with, which is such a painful experience. And how much are we expecting from that one singular individual to build capacity?
That's
Because,
true. That's
like,
true.
that's a space that we need to look at in order to build more inclusive experiences at at an individual level. Yes, I think one of the things that when I work with my clients, one of the things that keeps coming up is one of the things that we work towards is how do we understand the dialectics and embody the dialectics of living with this illness, which means if yes, I have, and I have illness, and I have grief, and I have so much grief of the loss of everything that I'm experiencing. While I have all of that, I still have joys in my life. And what are those joys? They may not look exactly the way they were few years back, which means that each time I'm having to redefine what is joy for me.
Right.
But how do we build that capacity? How do we create that and in our language? Then, and when I say language, our internal language, how do we build that capacity that, pain is there and I have systems, I am working towards managing the pain. It will show up invariably at multiple times, but the dialectics is that while pain is there, there's also joy. there are also things that I'm doing. There are also things that are happening in my life that I may not be focusing, because pain is a very demanding experience.
That's
Especially
right.
debilitating pain like endometriosis is a very demanding experience.
And I think, Anindita, it takes time to build that kind of a mindset,
Yeah,
or the so-called maturity to let the feeling sink in, that okay, this is what it
yeah,
is, and you have to deal with it. But alongside that, it doesn't mean that you cannot be happy. So for me, being in a profession for as long, you
yeah,
being used to working like I don't know how many hours at a stretch, and coming to a point where even doing the smallest things used to trigger my issues.
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like a it was like a
yeah,
bad phase to be in. But yes, now over a period of time, now I know that all right, if I overdo things, I know I will
yeah,
have to take 20 steps back. I
yeah,
might as well balance things out, and there is something called as delegation of work. I think you will need to delegate
yeah,
what needs to be done and
yeah,
still be okay with it,
yeah,
that the feel of I'm the one who does everything, from
yeah,
there to taking a step back and letting others do it for you,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
I think
takes
that's
a
also
lot of.
common, right? What you just said, that delegating. I mean, in my work, I call it the help seeking behavior, that I can rely. It's called interdependence,
Right,
that I can
right.
rely on someone else. We are not taught that.
We're not.
We are not taught that. So it's a suddenly when you're hit with this illness, which is such a debilitating experience, it's a very difficult aspect to learn to get to get to a space where it's okay for me to be depending on
Right.
someone else for some things that I may not have energy for. And you said it like that you were right. You're right when you say that it takes a lot of time to build that capacity. It isn't an overnight thing, right? So I mean, I wish I could just give like a few strategies and it would be like, yeah, overnight.
That was something which I was just about to ask you. That are there any specific strategies that you can, help tell our audience, which might help them cope up with the chronic illnesses that they have, and probably something that you have been using in your practice.
I think one of the things that I'll say is it's it's a it's a a line from a book called "Pain Demands to Be Felt." That's the line, that pain demands to be felt, and I say this from a perspective of feelings. When you are hit with a chronic illness, there's going to be a lot of grief. And acceptance of your chronic illness is not going to be a one stop space. Today,
Right.
I may have complete acceptance of the fact that, oh, yeah, I have a chronic illness and I have joy in my life and I still have pain and it's okay, I can manage that. Tomorrow, I may have a lot of grief. Tomorrow, it may not be acceptance, which means acceptance feels like it, it feels like a spectrum. It's not a single stop that, oh, I have accepted my chronic illness. Each time that uh, there's a new symptom that shows up, there's a new diagnosis, there's a new difficult experience, or each time that I didn't expect and the pain showed up, invariably there's going to be grief. Which means one of the things that we cannot do is we cannot run away from that grief. We say
Right.
this, and I say this in my sessions also, the only way to integrate your pain experiences in your life is to also go through that grief, because there is no other way that I can't run away from my grief, because it will catch up. At some point or the other, I am going to feel the hit of it, feel the hit of all of those emotions So I would definitely suggest that, one of the things that I do for myself is when there is grief, it's okay to allow that grief to exist. That yes, I have lost a lot of the things that I wanted in my life, and it is a painful experience. Just naming it, right? Naming it that this is grief, that this is pain for me, this is this is a lot of sorrow for me. Just naming it in itself takes away the intensity with which it hits us.
Right.
So if I'm able to name it, I'm able to start taming it a little bit.
I
That's
get
one
that.
aspect.
I get that.
The
Hmm.
other one of the things that I do in my sessions, it's going to be very hard to say it here, but one of the things that I do in my sessions is we do different body exercises, and by body
Mm-hmm.
exercises, I mean like different somatic body experiences, noticing sensations when we are talking about grief. If let's say I was to talk to you about pain right now, or if we are talking about endometriosis or a singular event that happened related to endometriosis, our emotions start in our body. They don't start in our brain, which is the part that we don't often recognize. That our emotions are a sensation in our body first, and then our brain recognizes that, oh, this is what I'm feeling. Which is why for a
Right.
lot of things, if your language, the language that you learned or you spoken, if it doesn't have a term for that emotion, we only talk about the sensation in the body. Like a lot of people say, ghabrahat ho rahi hai. Like,
Correct. Correct.
the feelings of anxiety, because there's no term for anxiety per se. Right?
Hmm.
So we notice those sensations that come with pain, and we do certain breathing exercises, and then we re-notice sensations, that what it feels like in your body now. And the
Hmm.
idea is that while the pain sensation exists in your body, you can also have different sensations in your
That's interesting.
body, which means I'm building capacity for the pain to exist, along with the fact that I can take a deep breath and I can still feel like, oh, my hands feel relaxed. Even if it's just the fact that my hands feel relaxed. It doesn't mean that
Interesting.
the pain
Yeah.
sensation goes away, but it helps
Hmm.
reset your nervous system from the perspective that, okay, there's pain, but there's not only pain. Otherwise, your nervous system goes into a high drive saying, oh, pain, there's pain, there's pain, there's pain. And it's
Right. Right.
constantly just talking and in that pain loop. So
Yeah.
we tend to break that in the sessions, we tend to break that pain loop by different
Hmm.
somatic exercises. Like
Okay.
there are different things, like there's a self hug and you do breathing, and there's boo breathing. There are different somatic exercises that we do that just gives you allows you to feel a different sensation.
Your call. Yeah. Better now?
Uh, yeah, better now.
Yeah. Sorry, I was getting a call, so I think there
Oh
was some
no, no,
issue.
no, that's okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So what I was saying is this approach
So
that
what
you were
I
talking about.
just 1 second. What I said was, if you want, I can demonstrate one
I
at the
would
end.
love. That's what I was about to ask. If there is a way in which you could show it to the audience, it would be like amazing.
Okay. This is a very small one that I'll demonstrate. It's not like the only thing, but it's a very small one. Uh, so I'll just do like a very basic breathing thing with you. Right? I just want you to take a minute. You can either leave your eyes open, or you can close your eyes or leave it half open, whatever feels comfortable for you. Right? Just allow yourself to notice any sensation that's happening in your body. Just whether it's a pain sensation, it's a hot sensation, it's a coldness or a tightness, anything. Just allow yourself to notice whatever is coming up in your body. Any sensation that shows up. It could be near your neck, chest, your shoulders, or your hands, or your feet might be tight or clenched. Just take a minute. And whenever you're ready, let me know that sensation.
I have this tingling kind of a thing on my fingertips.
Okay. So there's a tingling sensation in your fingertips. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. This is a part that I want you to keep for yourself, that there is a tingling sensation in your fingertips. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to breathe in. I want you to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach. Take an easy breath in and see which part is moving. Is it the stomach or the chest or both?
It's both, probably.
Okay. That's okay, right? Whichever is moving. We are not trying to change that right away.
Mm-hmm.
We're noticing, right, with how my breath is. So now what we will do is we will inhale and we will exhale through our mouth. So we will inhale for 4 counts and we will exhale for 7 or more. So I'll do the counting for you. I'll demonstrate it once, right? So you inhale and when you exhale, you purse your mouth and you exhale. Yeah. So I'll do the counting. You can leave your eyes open or you can close them. And I'll do the counting and we'll follow through with that. I want you to, while you're doing this, I just want you to notice what sensations show up in your body while you're doing this. Yeah? Take an easy breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. We'll do it one more time. Take an easy breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What sensations are showing up in your body? Is there any tightness, any change in sensation?
The tingling for sure is reduced, but saying that, having sort of I don't know how to explain it, but it's sort of relief when you breathe in, it feels better for sure.
So that's the part, right? Yeah. Whatever the sensation is, that is different from the tingling sensation. We are allowing our bodies that as well, along with that tingling sensation, or along with the tightness. For some people, it may show up as this is a very basic one that I just started with. Right? For some people, it may be a tightness in your chest or a tightness in your stomach, or feeling like we don't always notice, but we tend to clench our fists or our toes. We tend to clench our toes, like they are in a collapse. Right? So what we just did, if people do yoga, they will know this breathing technique, but this is also called polyvagal breathing, where what we are doing is we are increasing our exhale, elongating our exhale compared to the inhale. So you inhale for 4 or 5 counts and you exhale for 10 or more. In that process, when you increase your exhale compared to your inhale, when you elongate it, what you're doing is you're letting your nervous system know that you can rest. Because when we are not in a rest mode, when we are in fight, flight, freeze, or any of the stressful mode, which most people living with chronic illnesses are, we are in consistently on guard. We are consistently on guard. When we are consistently on guard, we are we are not in a rest mode, which means we are not breathing,
Right.
where we are elongating our exhale. We are not exhaling as much. We have very shallow breaths when we are, because our nervous system is like, I can't spend any time making you feel comfortable. I have to fight. So I'm not going to make you feel comfortable. That's what your nervous system is in. So here you're just sending your nervous system a signal that, hey, listen, you can rest. You don't need to fight. Yes, I'm in pain and I'm not taking it away, but you can rest. You're just letting your nervous system know that. You're letting your brain know that you don't have to constantly feel like you have to be on your guard.
Right. Right. That makes sense completely. I mean, the ease with which you have explained this complicated thing is is amazing. I mean, this is something which a lot of people with chronic illnesses would, they would relate to what you're saying. And the way you have explained it about relaxing your nervous system, I think that's the need of the hour. I mean, you have to do it, otherwise it
Yeah,
is difficult.
yeah. And I want to put a conditions applied part there is that if any of you who are watching this at the moment, if you're living with a chronic illness, or if you're a therapist or a doctor who's suggesting this to your client to do breath work or meditation and things like that, just know for a matter of fact that it's not going to work if you are only doing it while you're stressed out. It is
Right.
going to work if you do it as a practice. Like what I tell all of my clients to do it 5 times in the morning, do it 5 times in the evening, every single day. Because what you're doing is you're familiarizing your nervous system with a tool. If it is not familiar with that tool, it will not pick it. It will go
Right.
into a fight or flight or a stress response. It will go into a stress response because that's built into your system for thousands of million years, right? It will not pick
Obviously.
something that's new.
Right.
So
Right.
you have
That's
to
right.
make it familiar to your nervous system, which means even if you're doing it 3 times or 4 times in the morning and 3 times or 4 times in the evening or through the day, do it when you're not stressed out.
Hmm.
Only then will
So
it
do
pick
it
it
on
up.
your regular, when you're like in the normal, not
Yeah,
the flared up
yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
environment. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Do like
nice. That's
how you
nice.
have your
Yeah.
supplements on an everyday basis.
Right, right. Take it as your supplement.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
exactly.
Okay, so almost towards the end of the session, just one last
Yeah,
question before I just take, what is there in the comments. I'll just see that.
yeah.
So, is there anything particular that you would want to give as an advice to the aspiring therapists who deal with clients who have endometriosis or any other chronic illness that is there?
Yeah. I think one of the things that uh, is the need of the hour is we need more pain affirmative therapists. Which what does that mean? Is when your client is telling you that they've seen a pain that may have been unheard of, or that you don't know of, or none of the doctors are listening to your client. It's important for you to advocate for your client. It's important for you to let your client know, I believe your pain, right?
Right.
Even if you don't know what that illness is.
Mm,
I
mm.
can say that if you're working with a client who has been diagnosed with endometriosis, learn more about that illness. Learn more about that illness. Talk to your client. What does it feel like to be living with endometriosis for them? That's pain affirmative. When I say pain affirmative, that is an experience that so many people don't have, that somebody telling you that, listen, I believe that you're in pain. even if all your reports are normal, even
Right.
if it doesn't show up on medical reports and you are in pain, I believe you. So before, as therapists, before we start telling our clients that this is a somatic issue, or this is a somatic form of pain, or before we ever start telling our clients that this is psychological, do you think there's a psychological aspect to your pain? Let's first affirm the fact that they are in pain.
Right.
My reports were consistently normal. All of my reports were normal. But I
Same here.
was in pain all my life. And I didn't have a single person tell me that I believe that you're in pain until my now husband, then partner, came in my life, and he consistently affirmed. It was my first affirmative experience that I believe that you're in pain. Right? So when a client tells you, as a therapist, one of the things that you can provide to your client who's living with a chronic illness is to see them with their chronic illness and what their unique struggles of their chronic illness is. Right? And we can show up in the smallest of the things. Like my therapist gives me a slot that is not fixed. It's not a fixed slot, fixed time, fixed day, because she knows that I can be in pain. So she gives me that accommodation that if I'm in pain, I can let her know.
Right. Right.
That allows for me to feel seen with my entirety. I don't feel like I have to hide that part of me that struggles.
That's true.
It could be those small accommodations that we provide to our clients. Right? Our clients living with pain.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. What you said is like, that's something which I think a lot of therapists need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the other things also happen as therapists, we are also taught to fix things. Like we have to have it's something that we are just taught in our masters, in our education, in our training. We are taught to tell you that this is our understanding, or tell you what our interpretation of what you are telling me is, or to give you direction. Like a lot of therapy techniques are also very directional.
Correct. Correct. That's right.
That's not something that works with most of the people living with chronic illnesses or disabilities. It is something that invariably creates a gap where it feels like my lived experience is less than your training. So one of the things that I keep telling all the supervisees that I have as well, that it's very important for you to focus on the lived experience of that pain that the client is talking to you about, right? Than what your understanding of that pain is.
Right.
Your understanding of someone else's experience, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It is their experience. So what is that pain that the other person is talking about? Just understanding their unique life stressors with that and affirming that hey, I believe you. When you tell me you're in pain, I don't care if the doctors don't believe you, but if you're telling me you're in pain, I believe you.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of it. And gather information. If you know that your client is living with an illness and they are diagnosed with that illness, read up. Read up, talk to other therapists or people who have similar illnesses. Read up and talk. Get to know what that illness is.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. So knowing your client thoroughly is the key, actually. And believing in what the person is saying, rather than trying to impose what you feel. That's
a big part of it.
Absolutely. So, Anindita, I was just going through the comments, and I saw Anu ask, "How do you deal with fibromyalgia?"
Fibromyalgia, even though it's an exclusionary diagnosis, it's very less researched, firstly.
Yes, that's right.
From a psychological and a therapeutic perspective, I do a lot of body work with my clients who have fibromyalgia because that really helps. I Like I said, I help them recognize onset to fibromyalgia flare-ups. I live with fibromyalgia, so this is something that I had to learn to do for myself as well. That uh, what are my starting points to a full-fledged flare-up before I have
Right.
the actual flare-up? When we start recognizing different sensations in the body, we also start recognizing the little onsets. Like, one of the things that I have for fibromyalgia is I know that I'm going to have a flare up if my finger joints start hurting.
Right. Right.
And I may not always notice it as hurting because it's not a full-fledged pain yet, but I can start feeling the stiffness. So I I try to work with my clients to bring in what the starting points are, and it takes a while to notice those, and that's okay. Right? So that I can learn to use all my tools when I'm having or before I'm having a flare up. If I start using my tools then itself, it becomes easy for me to manage that flare up, which means I start pacing myself because I know for a matter of fact that I am going to have a flare up in the next 24 hours. So I will pace myself for the next 24 hours. Like, if I have very important meetings or if I have deadlines, I'll let them know 24 hours prior that, hey, I may have a flare up. So allowing yourself that space. The other aspect of fibromyalgia is very important to recognize your trigger points.
Yeah.
And when I say trigger points, I'm talking about emotional trigger points, not just your trigger points in your body, or not just the food aspect of it. Food has a huge part to play in fibromyalgia, but emotional trigger points invariably cause a flare up in fibromyalgia, right? Which means if I have a deadline or if I'm having a very difficult time with a friend or a family member or in my relationship, invariably I may have a series of flare ups. I may have cluster flare ups, or I may have like one single flare up that just doesn't go.
Right.
Because it's your nervous system which is on override. So every time that your nervous system is on override, your fibromyalgia invariably will flare up. It's very closely tied to your nervous system. So recognizing how do I bring my nervous system to homeostasis, to an equilibrium where it's not on an override, that is a big part of their work. So, yeah.
That is helpful. That is helpful. And the worst part is fibromyalgia not getting diagnosed again is another story. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a story for
Yeah.
another day. But
Yeah, we can do a whole live on that, how fibromyalgia doesn't get diagnosed.
yeah, I know, I know. Um, I was going through the comments and people really have all good things to say about you, Anindita. They're like, you are honestly very inspiring, and the way you have been dealing with your illness and how you have channelized your energies into doing doing what you should be doing, helping people get over their chronic illnesses and how to deal with it is like amazing.
Thank
So,
you.
Anandita, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And this was like a beautiful live session that we've had.
Thank you so
So
much for having me. And thank you so much for bringing this talk into picture, because I don't think this is a very important aspect of chronic illness which people don't talk about. And thank you for
yes,
making it inclusive, because I'm glad that we could speak about different genders and how they are not getting diagnosed and what is it like for them
right,
as well.
right. Thank you. I would like to thank all our viewers who have watched this live, and for anyone who's going to watch it recorded, I thank you for all the support you people give. I mean, the love that I get from you keeps us going. This is what our aim is, to create awareness about endometriosis and how it is to live with endometriosis. So, signing out for today. Take care of yourself and have a lovely evening ahead. Bye,
Thank you.
Anindita. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.